Welcome to Player Driven. Here's what you're about to listen to in today's episode. We are talking with the Devhouse Agency founder, Jim Welch. We talk about a whole variety of topics about how he got his start in music composition and starting with sound, how he found Devhouse Agency, why he's now building his original IP, what was co-dev like. There are a lot of different topics that we covered on today's episode. Jim is a wealth of knowledge, and it's a really cool episode. So I hope you enjoy it and let us know what you think. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Player Driven podcast. Greg here. Today on Player Driven, we are joined by Jim Welch, the founder and creative director of the Devhouse Agency, a studio that blends client work with original innovation in gaming and immersive tech. Jim's career began with a different kind of controller, music. He composed soundtracks for Dragon Ball Z and Full Metal Alchemist. This creative path led him from audio design to coding and eventually founding one of the most forward-thinking co-dev studios in the space. They're also working on launching their own IP now, which I'm excited to learn about the whys and the hows behind that. But before we jump too deep into this conversation, Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you? And it's Jim's birthday. Sorry. Happy birthday, Jim. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, no, it's a great day to do a podcast because we can great birthday present for me. So yeah, it's
there you
good.
Go. You keep giving gifts here. We'll see how many insights we can get out of you here, and maybe that's how we can correlate how old you are.
There you go. Yeah.
I loved, during the kind of when I'm reviewing who I'm talking to, I do this research, and you got your start in audio, and I love that. I don't do enough of these audio style podcasts where I learn about making music, creating music. I think there's such an art to it that's amazing to be able to see a picture and correlate what sounds or what music or what should be happening in your head. I'd love to understand kind of how you got your start in sound design, how you got working with Dragon Ball Z, and how that creative background still influences the type of work you do today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, my early years as a creative person, because I really see myself as that's kind of what I do. I run a business, of course, but it's really from the heart of creativity that it exists. So at an early age, music was really what drew me in. There was a brief period where, as a very young kid, I was like, well, maybe I'll go into theater or music. And there was a point where the classes overlapped and I had to pick, and I picked music. And so I went really full into audio, and I learned guitar. I was playing in bands. And just over the years, I thought, I want this to succeed. And when you work with other people, like in a band, you find that your ambition levels don't always align. And so that kind of pushed me towards more composition, where I could maybe have a little more control of the output. Whereas a band, you're very reliant on your bandmates. And that just kind of led me down a path. I went to school for music composition out in Oregon, and then I went and worked for Funimation Entertainment, which is where I was doing music and sound design both for their trailers. So yeah, like all the Dragon Ball Z trailers. I think that's a good call out because that's one of the favorite ones for me growing up. I even have my little Krillin here, but yeah, also all their properties, right? Working on these pieces.
Music composition from where I sit, right? Like, I understand what that is, but I don't know when you go to school, what is your goal? Do you want to, what do you want to do when you grow up, when you're going to study music composition? Is it doing what you did? Like, did you grow up loving Dragon Ball Z and you wanted to do that? Was it more, hey, I want to work on soundtracks? Like, what's the goal when you're in school? Maybe you just don't know.
I think at least I knew. I feel like I've always had a target. Now that target changes as you try things out and as you grow up and as you learn things. Early on, I wanted to play and be a performing musician. I wanted to play in a band, and I did that for a number of years, never to a very large level, but I'd play shows and stuff, and that was fun. When I shift to composition, when I realized it was hard to kind of at that age, I was not a great leader. Even still, I'm very much learning to be a great leader. So shifting to kind of doing my own solo thing. It shifted more to like film. I think film is where a lot of composers see themselves. You can do film. You can be a teacher. That's another common path out of music school. Or you can go more into I would say like academic performance type pieces. So pieces that like other schools and college students will perform. That's a challenging one, I think, to make a living on, but people do it. For me, the anime thing kind of came by chance. It was film adjacent. It's like trailers and things. And when I looked for work, there was an opening, and yeah, I just kind of found my way into that specific spot.
I have to imagine running a company is slightly different than music composition, creating music. But I have to imagine there's many skills that translate well from what you learned there to running a company. And I'm curious, what type of skills did you pick up while you were in school that you're still using today that kind of are more related to the music side of things?
Yeah, I think school is really great for just getting life exposure. I think for me, that was where college really helped. It's just that time with your peers, and that's a lot of I'm one of the on the kind of side of the fence that like school doesn't like super well prepare you for the job field, but I'm not anti college or anti school because I think it prepares you for life. And so school itself didn't do a lot to prepare me for my work, but working at Funimation and being a composer and sound designer and eventually freelance, there was a period where I switched between my kind of engineering and business part of my career and my working as a composer. I was a freelance musician, and that taught me a ton about like how to run a business and how to get paid for your work and what to price your work at and how to deal with clients. And so there's a lot of overlap there. Also a lot of overlap in writing music with writing code. That has a ton of overlap.
So I'm just taking notes here. I think that's awesome. And I love your note on college. I feel the same exact way. I think most jobs are going to teach you what you need to know in that position. College will give you the fundamentals. But I think from a social perspective, learning how to engage with your peers, how to make friends, all this stuff that you think it sounds like common sense, but once you're in college, you kind of. I remember always telling myself when I went to college, it was kind of my chance to redo who I want to be. Right? No one knows you really. Like you can be the person you want to be, and I think I was very introverted going into school. I was shy, I was quiet, and I still am, even though I host this. But it got me so much more. Eager to introduce myself to people and meet people. And I think that's the most important part of college is kind of learning how to socialize with your peers rather than learning the everyday skills that you need. And yes, you'll still learn them, but I think it's a big social an expensive social experiment. But
Right.
I think it's important just to kind of learn how to interact with your peers.
Yeah, and I mean certain careers you need school. If you want to be a doctor or a teacher, there's requirements, and there's certain colleges that if you go to, they have networks that kind of form out of those schools. Especially like you look at like Ivy League and things like that, you build a professional network. So there's always exceptions to the rule, but yeah, I think we're aligned on kind of that general value for sure.
So when you're ready to start your own company here, right? Was there a day you just woke up and you're just like, you know what? I'm ready to do this on my own. Like, what was that motivator to say, I'm ready to go out on my own and start something?
Very gradual. Yeah, it definitely wasn't a one day thing. Um, I I always enjoyed creating my stuff on the side. So while I was working at Funimation, I was writing music on the side for games, which that's kind of the transition from being more of a film linear media composer to a game composer. That was also gradual. I always wanted to do that since I can remember, but the act of doing it became gradual on the side initially, then full time freelance, and that kind of happened over time. Starting the business, similar. After my kind of the music part of my career, I did a startup, really because I wanted to do more in games. This was after I started freelancing, and I said, okay, I'm making music for all these other games. What if I made my own game? It's really that urge to like be more creative. And again, that's not like day one. All right, new game. I'm quitting freelancing. Everything. It's doing little game jams and like experimenting and things like that. And even then, I ended up doing a long stint or somewhat long stint as a coder engineer for companies. Like I was hired as an engineer after kind of teaching myself to code through game jams and things like that. And I did that for a number of years before I said, okay, I think I can run a studio on my own. And even then, it was like just me. Like when I stopped working for other people, I was Devhouse until I hired more people. So it wasn't like, oh, I just got a bunch of money, let me hire 20 people. It all happened over multiple years for sure.
It's interesting. We talked to a lot of developers turned indie studio founders, right? And in that case, they got the development down, but they might need help with other sides. And from your side, right, I'm curious when you're looking to make that first hire, What's the skill set that you think you look for first? Is it an engineer because maybe your engineering skills aren't on par, or is it something else? Maybe it's marketing. Like, how do you think about that first hire? Yeah.
I would think about it differently today. I think today it might be on the marketing side and it might be on the community building side because it's
Mhm.
just so important to build a successful game. Now that's if you're making your own game. Devhouse's core business is making games for others. But even then, maybe a salesperson or someone on the business side. What I actually did was just try to hire another one of myself. So like I was an engineer and I was like a generalist, and I would be hired to help teams. And then I just kept saying yes. And I was overloaded. And I was like, all right, I just need to clone myself. And so I just hired another generalist engineer and did that for the first 3 hires or so. And then I brought on a project manager. And so I kind of started slowly building a company based on the biggest pain point. I was like, I don't have enough hours in the day to code all this. I need another engineer. I don't have enough people to talk to this client, or I don't have enough time to talk to the client. Let me hire a project manager. Right now it's just whatever the biggest pain point of the business is, but we're gradually getting more sophisticated with those hiring decisions for sure.
I think that's fascinating. I remember maybe 20 years ago, I was sitting at my job and I was kind of like a master or good at everything, but master of none, right? I was very good at this stuff and I never got promoted and I never got anything. And it kind of pissed me off. And I realized one day looking at myself, it's because I was good at everything and a master of nothing that they didn't know which direction I wanted to go. And I didn't even know what direction I wanted to go. And it made me understand that when you can start focusing on a specific discipline, whether it be marketing or engineering or sound or whatever, right? You can become an expert in that field. And then when they need someone there, they hire it, right? Like a generalist, at least at the lower levels, like it isn't, it's good to learn how to do everything, but to advance your career, you need to pick something that you really do love doing and doing it. And I think it sounds like that was kind of like you just wanted more of you because you can do everything. But if you would have focused on, hey, I need someone specifically for engineering that focuses on engineering tasks, then you can take most of your engineering stuff and swap it over there. That it becomes a little more scalable in that terms. Am I accurate there or?
Yeah, and we're learning that as a business too. It's so even as an individual, as you said, like focusing lets you be better at that thing. And our team being a small team, we like generalists because it makes us agile. If you're coming to a small company like mine, being a generalist is a benefit. Now, if you want to go work for like a larger studio, like a Riot or a Blizzard, those companies are going to want you to be a specialist. They're going to want people at a certain caliber that being a generalist doesn't support. So it depends on kind of what your, I think, career interests are. If you like want to work on a small agile team and make kind of indie games or work on the type of projects we do, it can be good. But as a business, we've been super generalists, and we every year or two we like narrow down what our specialty is. And so there was a year or so back we did a lot of AR VR alongside our kind of more flat screen games, and we realized like that was confusing to our clients. Like, well, are you guys a VR studio or not? And so we actually started splitting off kind of brands to cover these specific spaces that we want to keep working in. And there'll be periods of time where so Spark and Bolt is our more enterprise AR VR immersive tech company. There'll be periods of time where we don't go close work in that space and we don't focus on that space, and then we'll decide to put more focus on the space. But now we have that language and that brand to communicate that skill set without muddying it with like all these other things we could do. So that's something we're learning as a business too.
That's interesting to hear, and it kind of you can kind of connect dots to community as well there, right? So what's the community looking like for AR, VR type of games right now? Or we see growing community in this type of game. Maybe we want to put some more time and effort into these projects because we're seeing growing community here. It's almost like you can take a look at what's happening with the market and kind of make those hypotheses to say, hey, I want to build this type of game because we're starting to see more momentum, more chatter here.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's a lot of how you're perceived. Like we have a really wide skill set, but people don't necessarily want to dig in and figure out like, well, can you do this? They want to be like, make it very clear, like, here's what we're looking for. Is this something that you are good at? The scary thing is, and I found this in music too, I was a generalist in music. I think I always go for the safer, wide net. But that was a lesson that was communicated in that circle as well. Like you could be like the orchestral composer or like the synth composer or whatever it might be. Or you can just be composer, and you can be hired. And what happens is you get a lot of the lower end work because those people are willing to kind of like not need that specialist who often charges more. If you're the specialist, you might have harder time finding the work because there's maybe less need for a specialist in synth music or whatever it might be. But when you get it, you can charge more. And so it's just it's an interesting business discovery that it's always kind of in the back of your head and you hear it, but we're having to face it more and more as the space of co-development gets more crowded.
Yeah, it's funny. You say you're a generalist when it comes to music, and I think if someone just playing Wonderwall or something on the guitar there, it's like very generic there.
Yeah,
Um,
what was cool about the Funimation role is like that company has a ton of brands. Like you'll hear of the big ones like Dragon Ball Z and Full Metal, but I mean now they're part of Crunchyroll. But like they have hundreds of shows that they're under their banner, and so every week it would be like, here's a new show and make a new trailer for it, and it'd be extremely different genres, like, oh, write something very similar to this Gorillaz track, write something very similar to this John Williams track, here's a Snoop Dogg song we want to do something similar to. So like it was a really fun role that got to flex my generalist capabilities. So yeah, it was an interesting part of my career for sure.
how does a process like that work? Do you see the video and they're just like, "Hey, we want something that sounds like Snoop Dogg in this video. Go for it," or like how much freedom do you have, or does it depend on the project?
So yeah, there's typically the editor. So like there's me and one other audio person on the staff at that time, and so we sat right across. We had our little like quiet offices for making audio, but right across from us were all the editors. And so because Japanese marketing is so different than American marketing, it was like, hey, here's the show that we are not going to market to an American audience. Editor, make a trailer from scratch. Like we're not going to use any marketing material from Japan. We're going to make something from scratch. So they would make an edit. They would do motion graphics, and really the editor often picks a track to edit to. So like they pick something they think would be cool. So it's often influenced by taste, right? Whoever that editor is, it's like whatever's in their mental library of music. Sometimes there is a brand manager. So sometimes the brand manager says, hey, can you use this track? There's almost always a placeholder track that came with it. And then it's just like, hey, Jim, make something similar to this. It's rarely like, hey, just ignore that track entirely because now they have a mood and they're used to it, so they want something similar to that. So that's kind of the process there.
So I'm just coming up, as you're talking, I come up with these fireball round questions where I can throw them at you. So now I got one there. Let's just go straight to the fireball round here, because then I want to talk more about codev and kind of what you guys are doing. So fireball round, I'm just going to throw some questions at you, not practiced, easy questions, and we'll go from there. Good to go?
Just do it.
All right. For our listeners, Jim, before we started, said it's his birthday. As we shared with you, he told me he would not be doing 21 shots for his birthday, which is understandable. But he said he would like to go for a cocktail. So what would be your cocktail of choice?
Ooh, it's kind of boring. Old fashioned is typically if I often I look at the menu of like what their specialties are, but if I don't see one, old fashioned is my go-to.
You can't go wrong with an old fashioned. It's old fashioned for a reason.
Yeah.
To the question that you just answered, is there a trailer and the sound to it that stands out in your memory as like the best trailer you ever saw?
Ooh, that's a great question. I know I can't remember which Alien property it was for, if it was the first one or Aliens, but there was an Alien trailer that I remember they had this siren noise that they would keep cutting. A very common trope in trailers is like to cut to black, but this was one of the earlier trailers that did this scary tone and then would cut back, scary tone and then cut back, and there's like a lot of anxiety that would fill you watching that trailer, and I remember that was something we pulled from a lot.
Nice. You have to check that one out. What is the last show you binge watched?
I wish I could binge watch The Last of Us season 2, but they release it episode by episode. So before that, probably. So I still watch anime from time to time. I think My Hero Academia. I never got into it when it came out, and so I started watching that one and binged through that one.
All right. Last question would be, what did you have for breakfast?
Currently having coffee. That is my breakfast, and most of the time, yeah, I don't eat breakfast. Sometimes a protein bar and a coffee is my go-to.
How do you take your coffee?
It's I like cappuccinos, but I'm too lazy to make them at home. So I mix like a protein coffee flavor with just black coffee, and it adds a little bit of cream flavor, but
I love it.
doesn't water it down too much.
I have a cappuccino or an espresso maker, and I'll take shots of espresso and I'll mix it with protein powder and oat milk, and that's like my
Yeah,
breakfast because I hate breakfast, but that's the best way to kind of get protein in my body.
yeah. I mean, because the coffee flavor is so strong, you can like it masks protein really well. Yeah, it's great.
Cool. All right, off the fire seat,
All
hot
right,
seat, whatever we call it. I don't know what we call it.
those were easy. I was scared. I thought they were gonna be
Yeah,
tough.
no, I know. And, I like the trailer one. I was really curious. I ask I'm always curious what people have for breakfast, but the trailer one just seems right. Like, which trailer
Yeah.
hit you the most?
That's fair. That was a tricky one because it's been a while since I've thought about trailers because that was my career for I think 6 years. I was at Funimation, but it's been longer than that since I've been gone. I've lost track now. 8 years, 10 years.
I always go to Gears. I think it was Gears 2 with the Donnie Darko song.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
I
That was a good
remember
one.
watching that in college. Maybe that's what college, the best part of college for me was just playing Halo and watching that trailer. It's just like, all right, back to our
That's a good
normal
one. Yeah,
schedule
that's a good
here.
one.
Devhouse Agency. So you're making music. You're ready to move on. You're ready to grow. You're building this stuff. You want to start your own company. You start the Devhouse Agency almost 9 years. It looks like now. So maybe its birthday is coming up as well, or at least according to LinkedIn. So you're there. You started your company. You have another one of you that you may have hired or similar to that. How do you find that first client? And did you know you wanted to do co-dev from the beginning?
Finding the first client, I think, and maybe there's other paths, but what worked for me and what I would recommend to anyone else doing it is to leverage your network. So I came from other studios that did similar work. I was at Groove Jones for a while, I was at Sector 5 for a while, and others, ExxonMobil. And after starting on my own, kind of reaching back out to those kind of past partners and saying, hey, can I support you? And that, because I was an individual, I was very affordable. I wasn't like some big company they had to hire and subcontract. So that was able to kind of get me started. And for me, casting a really wide net. And again, being an individual, even though I had like a DBA as a business at that time, I could basically say yes to a lot of things and kind of shavings make a pile. So early on, I was definitely not closing big 6-figure deals or anything like that. It was like little projects and a bunch of them. And so yeah, so that's kind of how I did that. And as far as like making first hires and things, that is really just, for me, was just based on need. If you go the fundraising route, I think that's a totally different path where maybe then you plan a little more of like who the key players are going to be on your team, what kind of client you want. You like, I think you do a lot more planning ahead of time, and then you pitch that to your potential investors, and you start differently than bootstrapping. Really, that, which is what I did.
When you are looking at these first studios, right? You're looking for, I'd assume, smaller to mid-sized studios, right? What is a good target for a studio that you're looking for? You're looking for specific types of studios, like individual-wise, size-wise. Like, what makes a good partner? I guess at the end of the day.
That's a good question. I think early on, it's whoever will hire you because you don't have the experience, so you need to be flexible and willing to kind of work with what you can get. I think as you grow as a company, you find that smaller clients. So this is like less so studios, but especially like individuals, like entrepreneurs and business owners. Smaller clients are more challenging because they don't have the experience of what a project typically goes through, and so they are often surprised by surprises, which is common in building software, especially. Whereas if you work for a larger company who's built software or who's worked with vendors, they know how it goes. So I would say, yeah, first, don't be picky, but over time, try to work towards more organizations that get it. Like, even if it's an agency, like a small agency will get it and will be a reasonable partner. Try to gradually phase out, like I'd say, like entrepreneurs and individuals. It's kind of a percentage of their gross like funds, right? So it's like if someone comes in and is like, I want to spend $50,000 on an app. As a studio our size, that's not very much. But if their entire life savings is $100,000, they're spending half of all they own in the world, right, on this thing. They're going to be very emotionally attached to it. That risks problems, right? Like when you're trying to make decisions, business decisions with them, there's a lot of emotion involved, which makes it challenging.
I think that's so well said. I think, just because you look at it as a glass half empty or glass full doesn't mean it's something different for someone else, right? The concept of 50K, what is 50K to you versus what's 50K to me, right? That could be a world of difference. And I think it's a weird analogy, but it's kind of like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Like someone's coming to you and maybe it's a small contract for you, but it's their life that they're giving to you in their hands. Like it does, like you want to find someone that you trust. And I think when you're a small company, it's nice because you're basically selling yourself. I don't know if you feel that way, but it's just kind of like, all right, if I can make myself trusted to this person and say, hey, I got you, right? Like the sale becomes easy because you guys or you girls, right? It doesn't matter. Right? Like you become partners there, right? And I think building that trust is one of the most important angles to take when you're starting a smaller studio or a smaller company, right? Because that's how these deals are made. It's kind of like a trust type of thing.
It is, absolutely. And I always, joke to my team or tell my team that like I'm not a salesperson. I came from audio and then I went to engineering. Like sales was never really a part of my career path formally. But I think the reason why we've been able to sell and close work and stay in business, through a pandemic and through whatever we would call what the games industry is going through now, it's because I'm a pretty transparent person, and I think being personable and working with people on a human level makes a difference. So I'd also say if you're trying to start a studio, if it's not you, if like you're not a person that can have a casual conversation with somebody, if that's challenging for you, then find someone on your team who can, because that is such an important part. Even if like I don't do like salesy, pitchy stuff to people. Like I just talk with people. So yeah, I think that's super important to be personable.
Yeah, everyone says they're not a good salesperson, but if you're a good conversation person, you can hold a conversation, you can ask good questions. That is the salesperson. You just don't recognize that as sales at the end of the day. And the number of people I talk to that tell me they're not good salespeople, but have such engaging conversations about what they're doing, I'm like, you are a salesperson. It's just not sales as you look at it. It's
Right. You think of like cold calling and yeah,
exactly.
like all these things, but yeah, it's a great point that sales comes in many forms.
Yeah, I liked your comment on whatever the games industry is going through now, because it's a wild ride. And you're also, after how many years, and maybe you have before, it's a good question to ask, looking at building your own IP. So, why in this time of turbulence in the market do you think it's the right time to be looking at your own IP?
Yeah, I mean, two reasons. One, we've always wanted to. Like, I always like to make my own things. Like, I had one regret I have about my music career is I never made time to make my own albums. Early, like when I was a teenager, I made like some rock stuff, but it was bad teenager music. And so,
Burn
as an adult,
CDs, you know.
yeah, exactly, yeah, burn CDs, yep. And then, but yeah, as an adult, after I got good at it, I never made time because there was always a client, there was always work to do. So same with in games. Like I've always wanted to just make my own stuff because that's, as a creative person, that's something that brings me joy. So that's the first reason, just because it makes me happy. The other reason, from a business perspective, is diversification. Like it can be an exhausting hamster wheel, being in the service business, because you always have to go find more work, and it's always like keeping the funnel full. It never stops, and so having that diversification, that okay, yeah, we close work, we love this side of the business, of like supporting other studios, but it would be nice not to like live or die on this quarter's interests, and like, oh, right now, because the game industry is in a weird place, that impacts how the market performs, and you have to adapt, and it's tough. And so diversifying with our own titles, will hopefully give us some other revenue streams.
Yeah, I think my at least feeling about that is if you own your own IP as well, right? Then you can start to really grow in different areas, right? And it may not always be a hit, it may be a flop, but if you don't build your own IP, it kind of your ceiling stays where it is. But once you have your IP, right, you can look for things like transmedia, different types of games, and I think it's a good way to also just test out what you can do, right? As you mentioned, right? You mentioned earlier in the conversation you wanted to look at marketing and community, right? And this kind of gives you that opportunity of, all right, well, do we want to start with that this time, or how do we implement that there? And I think it's a good way to just kind of look at all those skills and see what you can flex and where you might need some more help.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing you say to like early hires who are coming out of school. It's like, well, have you finished? Have you shipped a title? Have you finished a game? Because you discover all these other skill sets you need to get to the finish line, and you only discover them by getting to that finish line and releasing your own stuff. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about this IP or game that you're creating? Because there's some things that you talked about that I think are awesome and bring back the spirit of kind of uh, couch co-op type of gaming. But can you kind of let us know what you're building?
Yeah. So right now we're building a sort of Jackbox style experience. Sort of name dropping that because it's really the only game out there that does second screen, except for Sunderfolk, which just came out like today. Actually, today it formally releases today. Sunderfolk is like a D&D style second screen experience, but yeah, so it's a Jackbox style game called Trash Heist, and in Trash Heist, you are performing a heist as little trash animals, so like raccoons and rats and possums and crows, and the gameplay is sort of akin to mini golf, and so you take turns, sort of lining up your animal's trajectory, and you can like knock other animals around and mess up their shots, and we're currently like we're in kind of late prototyping, early pre-production, and we're playing with the idea of like how much is it co-op, how much is it competitive. Leaning a little more into competitive because we have a lot more fun and get more rowdy when we do that, but that has its own marketing challenges and whatnot. So
I love that. I mean, I think of Overcooked. Me and my wife having tons of fights about screaming at each other, right? And the more games you can create that create this fun, friendly co-op rivalry, right? It's kind of keeps you wanting to play that next game and next game. I think it's a smart way to look at it. And I just love the second screen, right? You could have a whole bunch of friends over and just have everyone connect their phone, and all of a sudden everyone's playing this game. And I think it's genius. When you how did the game come to be? Was it your own thought you've had over the years? Do you guys sit down in a boardroom and kind of throw ideas around?
yeah, this one was interesting. Like we've done some client work in the past that has used the kind of QR code technology to like join into games, and so we like knew the tech stack of like how do you actually pull off the second screen kind of joining through WebGL experiences, and because we knew that, we're like, well, let's leverage like that's a good like business point is like how do you leverage what makes you better than another team, like how can we stand out? Like everyone wants to make games and everyone wants to make amazing games. Like how do we succeed where others wouldn't? And that's often leveraging like what you might either special information or special skills. So that was like the foundation. It was like, hey, we know how to do this through our client work. So what can we make based off that? And then that actually became a pretty open discussion. I remember sitting down with the team and around, whiteboard and be like, hey, like here's what we want to do. I don't recall how it became Trash Heist. I think someone literally just like said it and we're like, that's a funny name. Like, let's call it Trash Heist. And then just it kind of snowballs like these little ideas. Like the only thing that started was like a second screen experience. What can we do? Oh, we're characters. It's a heist. Oh, trash heist. Oh, okay. Well, now we're trash animals, and it just kind of spirals from there.
You keep mentioning WebGL, and for listeners that don't necessarily know what that fully means, is that I think we're in this little bit of a revival where you can play games completely on the web, and they're good-looking games. I grew up when I was in high school. I think we used to play like slime volleyball. I don't know if you ever played that game, but like these were in-app games. If you remember addicting games from back in the day, right? You can launch games directly there. When you're thinking about stuff like that, how do you think about distribution, right? You can go on Steam, but then you're locked into Steam. In theory, you could just launch a web browser, right? And you can have people go on their TVs and launch a web browser. I don't know who's going to do that. But how do you think about distribution of the game when you're kind of talking through this?
Yeah, so I mean the easy path that you just assume is like, oh, we'll release a game on Steam. That's like because it's so I don't want to say like low effort because you still have to do some work to get a Steam page up and deploy, but relatively low effort. It's similar to like the app stores, like Google Play and iOS App Store. They're very democratized and easy to get onto, and so that's where we started. And now this particular game, it leverages both kind of the WebGL platform for your controller, basically your phone that controls your inputs, but the actual game that you're watching with the 3D world, that all is like a proper Windows executable file that would live on Steam. With that said, at GDC this year, Jackbox had a talk, and they were talking about how they want to be on smart TVs and how they want you to be able to, as you're scrolling through the apps of your smart TV, see Drawful pop up, for example. And so that definitely got us talking of like, well, okay, they're changing how they deploy or adapting. Do we want to deploy directly to smart TVs? And for us as a small team, it doesn't make sense to like go deep down a rabbit hole of like left field deployments, things that are unproven. So we're still looking at the traditional paths, Steam and console. And then, of course, whoever buys it, the other people can just scan their codes. It's a one person buy kind of thing.
I love that. It's funny, I love what you said about Jackbox. I think makes a ton of sense for multiple games, right? Like being on the smart TV directly, but then you got to deal with Samsung and LG and everyone else, right? And how do you standardize that? And casting is an option, but I don't know how you would be able to run something with casting unless it's running on your. I don't know. I feel like there's a missing piece here that can come and help a lot of these WebGL games um, expand to the second screen, right? But I'm not sure how that would work. I'm just throwing kind of weird questions out there.
I mean, thankfully, Unity has recently so our studio does both Unreal and Unity development. This particular game is built in Unity, and Unity 6 has brought back WebGL. So like it's always been there, but it's been under supported, and it says like, hey, WebGL will work, but not on mobile. Maybe it will, but we won't support it formally. And you get a message that pops up, and so now Unity formally supporting WebGL again has been a big benefit to companies wanting to build on the web.
Yeah, and I hope it's a comeback of it. I think the more options we have for gaming outside of Steam, and I have no issues with Steam. I know there's some weird quirks that it has, but I think the competition would be good
for sure.
How, as a co-dev studio, do you balance kind of the work between your client work as well as the work that you want to do for your passion projects?
Yeah, the client work always needs to come first because it's what pays the bills and keeps the lights on. And so like we need to survive long enough as a studio to make a hit, right? To make a hit game. And that's not going to be our first. And we've made some games before. We recently released a VR game called Math Quest, and like, it's not going to be our first or last game. And so we need to do client work to stick around. But also like you have a responsibility, right? Someone's giving you money to build something. You need that to be like top of mind and most important to you. The way we logistically balance that though, because then we would basically never work on our own project, is basically having dedicated staff members who work on our internal project. And so that way it's pretty easy to say like, okay, who's available for this project? And you kind of just pretend those people aren't on your team and they're just not a resource you can use. And only in like a crunch type experience where like, oh, there's a red alert, this thing broke, the client has a presentation, we got to pull everyone on. Those are the only cases where we really have to pull those people. The other balancing element is my time. Like I spend a lot of extra hours and extra evenings writing code and working on the game. And sometimes too much. Sometimes I spend a lot of my days doing it, and that's where like the sales start to suffer, and I need to like pull myself away from the fun stuff and go back to business. And yeah.
Has there been, I guess, what is a part of the job that you did not foresee coming that you don't love?
I don't know if I ever really like sat down. I mean, one of my, I think, strengths as an entrepreneur is I just kind of dive in. Like strengths or weakness, I think it's a strength. I think you could argue the double-sidedness of that. But so I think when I started, I wasn't like preparing for the challenges or what could come up. So I never like had that, like, here's what's going to happen. And then something else happened. I would definitely say like the sales part is something that hasn't been able to go away from my plate. And that's something that I wish I could just do full creative stuff. So I'd say that's like the biggest thing. I think the other big thing is just learning to be a manager. I think that's actually probably the right answer there, because I assumed, I played in bands, I like led bands, I led groups and ensembles as a composer. And even early in the business, I was running, a team of a few people. But to be like a good manager is actually like really nuanced and really hard. And it's not just like, oh, be nice. And it's not just, oh, get stuff done. It's like this balancing act of how to get stuff done while being nice. And it's a whole skill set that I did not prepare for. And I've gradually been improving over the years, but it's an ongoing, never finished thing.
The number of people I know that tell me they want to become managers or directors and they do something that's kind of not working with people right now boggles my mind because it is a completely different skill set than people think. And people are applying for these high level manager positions that never managed people before. I'm like, you sure you want to do this? Like, when you're spending a whole week writing reviews for people and you're not getting work done, right? Like, are you going to still be happy? And I've known now a few studio CEOs that have actually stepped down from the CEO role to go back more into a creative side and hire someone in that position. And a lot of people want to be managers, and I think that's great, but I don't think people really understand the skill set that goes into managing well and to help people grow. It's a full-time job, right? You can't be, you can, it's just going to take up your whole day. You can be creative and manage, but management's kind of a special track that you really need to understand what you're getting into.
Yeah, because it's not, as you said, well, that it's like it takes up so much time that you end up being out of the craft, and that's kind of a negative thing for many people. And but then the other side is like you just assume it's pretty straightforward, and I think a lot of people who are in the trenches working, they look at their bosses and it's like, oh, this joker, they don't know what they're doing. But it's harder than it looks. Like it's like I came from being a craft person and employee and being a lead and all these different things in companies. And then like when it's all on your shoulders, things are different. You see the decisions I've made, but you don't necessarily see the choices I have. So it's challenging.
That's very well said. I'm curious from your perspective, right? Where is gaming heading? And that's a really loud, weird question, but you talked about again earlier the focus on community and marketing, and I think that's coming to a light these days, where people are saying, "Hey, we got to start doing this early." We're seeing people maybe back away from Web3 or not use that terminology as much. AI is a big thing, right? So gaming has a lot of moving pieces right now. Are there any trends that you're noticing that you think are going to stick around? Are there new things that are getting you personally excited?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this year AI is a thing to the point where like my LinkedIn feed is just inundated with AI messages, and I personally find it exhausting at this point. At first, it was kind of exciting, but now I'm kind of bored of hearing about it. But I mean, that's where like a lot of the investment money has been going over the last year. I don't know how much longer that's going to keep up. I think it's similar to Web3, where there is some utility and there is some value there, but it's not like a silver bullet. Like it's not going to like, oh, we just do this and now everything's great. To actually find a practical use for it, I think is still a ways out, and even then, it's going to be just for specific things. So I think there's an overexcitement about it. Something like the metaverse, right? It's like metaverse, Web3, like whatever the trend is, it has some value, but it's not going to be the whole industry is now AI. I think it'll be like Photoshop. Yeah, we use Photoshop, but some games don't use Photoshop. It's
Mm-hmm.
um, as far as like what excites me, I think I'm excited and nervous for, I think, the shift from big AAA budgets to like how we adapt to those not necessarily performing well enough and being too big of a risk. And now what comes out of that? So that my assumption is we're going to see a lot more smaller games funded, which is exciting because we're a small team. But the scary part is the competition of like, well, maybe everyone sees that, and now everyone starts forming studios around our size, and now we're less unique, and we have more competition in the space. But I think for consumers, what you're going to see is a lot more swings at smaller to medium sized games, and I think that's going to be good. I think there's still going to be the big AAA games like the Grand Theft Autos that they know they're going to make their money back, and there's going to be enough of those. And I think it'll be great to see some more variety. And then lastly, I would like to add that I think community building is going to become so even more important than before. Early days, it was like you had to get on the shelf of Walmart, and then you just had to get on the App Store. And then now it's like we're buried in stuff, and a publisher can help with some marketing, but a lot of it's just community building. It's like who's in your community, who knows about your game. So curation and community building is going to become more and more important. And so we're starting to put efforts on our team into that as well.
Yeah, it's come to this world of, and even community. I think there's some influencers out there that people see them playing games now and just like, no, this is just a paid influencer, right? Like if you put too much money into paid influencing or community, I think people start to see through that. Like, no, this isn't real. It's got to be organic in a way, and I love it. I mean, my whole shtick is community and stuff, but at the end of the day, you need a good game to go along with it, right? A good community is not going to save a crap game in a I just think it's important, build a great game and build up those organic users, get people playing the game, like get them talking about it. I think that's where this is all about these days. Like, I don't know, there's just so many games out there that aren't games. And the fact that we can get real gaming back out there, getting people talk about it, I think it's the best way to kind of spread the message to get people to buy it. And to your point, I think we need, and I talked about this in another podcast recently, kind of we need double A games to come back. We need, I think they're calling them like triple I, like indie games now, but like we need that space to come back because we have triple A and we have indies that are like fighting for everything right now. We need kind of those middle tier games to really make a strong comeback to help, I think, fix what's going on in gaming. But who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, it'd be great if more investments. When you start talking to publishers, they're pretty transparent about the budgets they want to work within, and there's definitely a big gap. Like, there's the really massive budgets, 50 million plus, and then there's the like 500,000 below for like the indies, and then that in between, the kind of 1 to 10 million is a space that's traditionally been fairly hard to fill. Like, that's just not a space a lot of investors seem to operate in on the publishing side.
Yeah.
So there's opportunity there.
Well, I think we'll see a revamp of how publishing works. I just don't know how long it's going to take and who's going to do it, but something's got to change from where we are today.
Right.
Jim, I think that's all I have for you today. Is there anything else you want to talk about or share?
Yeah, I mean, just I think finding us, when this podcast drops, Trash Heist should be live up on Steam. So go hunt that down to do a little plug for ourselves there, because we definitely want everyone playing Trash Heist. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, we are around and we'll be making games for ourselves and others. So excited to keep contributing to this industry that we love playing games from so much.
Yeah, I want to, again, thank you, Jim, for coming out on your birthday to talk about Devhouse, what you guys are doing. This whole conversation from starting as music composition to building your own co-dev studio to building your own IP and all that stuff in between. I think it's awesome to hear how you went about doing it. I'm super excited about Trash Heist because anything that has me on my phone doing co-op with people around me, I think is an amazing experience. So I'm excited to check that out. When this podcast does drop, we will make sure to have links to the pages where you can check out Trash Heist. We'll also have pages to the Devhouse as well, Devhouse Agency. Jim, again, first off, happy birthday. Thank you so much for coming out, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. I appreciate it.